Mamma mia! Whilst I would very much like to show you some gameplay of some Italian aircrafts, it's currently impossible to get an RB game into it. So instead, I'm going to show you the new Russian top tier main battle tank, the T-55A. The T-55 medium tank entered service with the Soviet Union at the start of the Cold War, as a replacement for the more and more under-equipped T-54. The new tank specifications and design was mostly derived from the T-54, having only minor visual differences. The vehicle used the same T-54 chassis, which changed the armor layout as a result of the additional weight from the new equipment. Since the tank was designed to operate in conditions where weapons of mass destruction could have been used, it had armor with radiation liner. This also added armor functionality, where it decreased the chance of internal modules being hit with a spalling effect and reduced the cone of the explosive jet of heat rounds. The gun was also modernized. The vehicle had a D10T2S stabilized cannon. As time went by, the old T-54 tanks were subsequently modernized to the T-55 model, leading to the later fusion of the two models under one designation, T-54/55. Over 12,000 T-55s were produced, spanning across multiple variants, in the Soviet Union alone from 1958 to 1969. Fitting given the patch number. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is the T-55A, Russia's new top tier main battle tank at Battering 8.0 right after the T-62. Now this tank looks very similar to T-54, and that's because it pretty much is. It uses the same T-54 chassis with some changes to the armor layout, as was explained in the history bit earlier, and a couple of new things like a stabilized cannon and a stronger engine. The T-55 remains with the same, or pretty much a pretty similar 100mm cannon to the T-54, with the option of this of course being stabilized. The cannon itself is pretty much the same base stats with a -5 degree depression and an 18-degree elevation. The reloading rate is the same with the other T-54 models, it's an 11.2 second base reload, and you have a 12.7mm machine gun on top and a 7.62mm machine gun on the coaxial. What does set this gun apart is the ammo choices. Stock, it comes with an AP Ssds Shell with 299mm of penetration. This is not the best shell around, but it's comparable to what you have on the stock Leopard and the stock M60s, for example, albeit slightly worse in some regards. You also have an APHE shell, which is absolutely amazing. This thing one-shots MBTs all day long, especially since most MBT crews seem to be very compacted in the tank, so APHE is very effective. And the Soviets, of course, are the only one who gets APHE shells at this tier. The only other explosive variant being Hash with the Leopards, with the M60s. I think they do have Hash as well, at least on the L7. And of course the Brits with their massive Hash shells. One new shell that this thing gets is the freebie M25 Ap Ssds Shell. This thing is amazing. Now the base penetration doesn't change too much, only up to 335mm of penetration, still nowhere near to the Chieftain, for example. But this shell compared to the stock shell is much better when it comes to dealing with angled armor and damage over range. If you look at the 10-meter distance, 30-degree angle value, you see that this shell has 170mm of penetration compared to stock shell's 121mm. And even at range you can see that the stock shell has 249mm of penetration at 2 km distance, whereas this has 260, so it retains its range a little bit better as well. And finally, of course, you can have a top tier main battle tank without heat FS, so you have a 390mm heat FS shell, which you can use against chieftains, but for the most part I just rock with the APHE shell standard just because of the one-shell potential. Now I'm not going to waste too much time on the armor layout, because honestly you're not really going to stop much. The turret may be able to bounce some APHE shells, but since Russia's the only nation that even uses APHE shells at this tier anyway, it's not really going to be an issue. The enemy isn't going to have an issue of penetrating you in the first place in most of the cases. Do notice that you do have a rather nice side armor of 80mm, which is pretty much very decent and should be enough to at least hold out some AA fire, although your rear is quite weak. Now, what sets this thing apart is the X-ray view. Are you spotting what is different with this tank that is generally a known weak spot for many other main battle tanks? This area here, in the T-54s, the T-64s, the Leopard, the M60s, is generally reserved for a massive ammo rack. And top tier tankers know that, well, hitting this ammo rack with a high penetration Ap Ssds Shell generally results in a one-shot kill. Not so with the T-55A. These fuel tanks, while they do catch on fire and they might occasionally blow up, they are trolling that they bait your enemy into firing this spot and just watch your shell get absorbed, setting you on fire but doing no major damage to the rest of the tank, which allows you to shoot back whilst you are still on fire. Now of course for this you need fire prevention equipment or else you are going to burn down anyways after a while, but it gives you a fighting chance at actually getting a shot in return before dying. The question then is it worth it going for the T-55? In my honest opinion, yes. This is not going to be the new best tank in the game, not by a long shot. It still is, at least in my own opinion, inferior to tanks like the Leopard and the M60s, simply because whilst it is a flat upgrade over the T-54, it still suffers from a rather lengthy reload compared to the L7 gun. The heat FS shell doesn't have quite as much penetration, and of course the armor isn't really going to save you much when you have the massive mobility penalty still. That being said, this tank is pretty much the fix to the Soviet situation up until now. What you had with the Soviets before was either a choice between the T-54s, which had, well, awful turret rotation speed, pretty meh armor choices until you got to the later ones, and just overall were a very easy target for everyone. Then you had the choice of getting the T-62, which by itself is an awesome tank with awesome ammunition, but the 150mm cannon has a very lengthy reload, which just doesn't fit well with the current game meta of top tier tanks. Now you have something in between. You have a gun that's stabilized, which is very useful for firing on the move. The tank platform itself is decently mobile. It's more mobile than the T-54s, albeit less mobile than the Leopards. And the main advantage this thing has is just the nice ammo choices. The APHE shell, the upgraded AP Ssds Shell, the heat shell, and of course having the 12.7mm machine gun on the top are all very great things. And of course, once you get the fire prevention equipment, you can actually troll people into firing into what is supposed to be the weak spot of main battle tanks and the fuel tanks at the bottom of the chassis. But since there's no ammo rack there, you're not going to die in one shot most of the time, so it actually allows you to survive first shots more so than the Leopard or the M60s do. Overall, this is a nice balanced tank that fixes most of the Soviet problems. It's just that it's right after the T-62, which means that you have to grind through the entirety of the T-54s and the T-62 to get the T-55, and it's going to be a very lengthy process if you haven't done so yet. But once you do, this is one of those things that I actually recommend putting a talisman on, just because, hey, why the hell not? Anyways, lads, hopefully you have enjoyed this. No, don't click away just yet. No, don't do it. Hopefully you have enjoyed this little video, quick overview. This is pretty much just my first game in T-55, so take what I said with a grain of salt. I know there's already going to be some shitstorms in the comments because, oh, T-55 is much better than you say, or you got something wrong. You forgot the Churchill Mark 1 in the patch 1.69 overview. I didn't forget. I chose to neglect it, okay? Anyways, lads, stay tuned for more patch 1.69 videos. I'm going to get, at least I'm going to try to get some videos out on detailing aircraft, if we can actually get some games into them. Maybe get the Chieftain Mark 5 as well, even though the tank is pretty much the same as the Chieftain Mark 3. Might do comparison in speed. Oh yeah, something I forgot actually. The T-55 does have better turret rotation speed. I have no idea why I'm putting this at the end of the video, but just so you know, the T-55 does have better turret rotation speed than the T-54, but worse than the T-62. Okay, that's it. Anyways, no longer ado, this video is already long enough. Thank you very much for watching this video. My name is MikeGoesBoom, and I'll see you next time.
You can lift your head up to the sky, take a deeper breath and give it time.